Here's another thing: a lot of good developers can't tell. They can't tell the difference between a lemon and an orange. So if they get into a deal, it's very difficult for a lot of developers to understand whether or not it's a good deal or a bad deal. And the reason I know that is because I see it so many times. Developers actually lining up to bid for a site, and they are ready to pay more than what the land is worth. So and that actually stems from their lack of due diligence. And if you're standing in an auction, I can quickly look at these people and say these people have no idea what they're getting into. They just want to get in there just because they can, and they haven't done their due diligence properly. So there are things like what you can put on a block of land, how much is that land worth, which basically you got to find out in a reverse manner. It's called finding out the residual value of land, to be able to ascertain what is the maximum price that you should be paying for this block of land, considering that you can put 8 apartments on them or 4 townhouses on them and so on. So these are the things that I see time and time again developers making mistakes with, and most of the good developers, they don't have a risk management plan either. You got to have a full-on risk management plan. You got to have your exit strategy in place. If that goes wrong, what you're going to do. If that goes wrong, what you're going to do, and so on. But if you're looking at a great developer, they understand that it's the deal that they don't do that counts, because there will be just one deal that could spell disaster for them if you haven't followed the steps. So long as you follow the steps and you've got a contingency plan, you've got how you're going to mitigate the risk as you go ahead with the thing, you should be fine. So if you look at what a lot of great developers do, it's like they do their full-on due diligence. And if I expand what's actually included in that, I'll just quickly go through it. And I include all of this in my property development system course. First of all, you've got to be able to determine what is the highest, best possible use of a block of land. And you do that by understanding the footprint and what you can fit on the block. Second, you got to, when you're selecting your site, there are a ton of factors that must be considered before you actually commit on it. There are things like zoning and overlays and a good understanding of what they are. You got to be able to collect data and analyze data. For example, what's been on sale, what's been on rent, what has sold in the area, and what's in the development pipeline. And in the course, the property development system course, I teach you how to gather this data from paid and free resources. Once you gather all this data, to be able to do site selection properly, you got to plot that on a block of on Google Maps. You got to plot all this data on Google Maps and really be able to zoom in and see, okay, these properties are selling for 229,000, and what are they? And I teach you how to do that, and that actually makes it so much easier to analyze what everything else around that area has been selling. And each color that you see over here basically represents either a townhouse, apartment, unit, and so on. So you got to do a full location analysis. Second, you got to be able to do a 2-second feasibility. It's called it's my smart feasibility calculator that comes with the course, but you can also buy that separately if you wanted to. If you visit propertydevelopmentsystem.com.au asset/2-minute feasibility calculator, you should be able to purchase this calculator that tells you how to, and it comes with a whole lot of different videos that you can download and go through them. So let's go back here. We've got you got to be able to read drawings. Great developers know how to read drawings, and the reason I've actually included that in my course is because I feel that when I started off with development, I had no idea how to read drawings. It was a struggle for me. There were so many things that should have been that I should have learned from the courses that I'd already done, but they don't teach you any of these things. I actually worked with a builder on a construction site for 7 months to be able to understand how these drawings, what these drawings were, what do they say, and what do they mean. And when you actually, especially if you are trying to pick up a site with plans and permits already in place, you should be able to look at something and say, okay, this is what's going to cost money, and that's what it means, and that's how I calculate the area. That's the ballpark construction cost that I can put on this. So these are the things that you got to keep in mind. You got to have your due diligence checklist, and I have a template that comes with the course that you can look at, and you have to have your risk management in place. So these are some of the due diligence things that great developers understand, and they also understand that it's the deal that they don't do that counts. So make sure that you have that in mind. A lot of good property developers, don't get me wrong, they don't understand how numbers work. Usually they don't know the complete capital requirements or cash injections for the duration of the project, and they do sometimes run out of money. And most of the time it happens because of inaccurate estimation of TDC, which is the total development cost, for example. They don't know how to conduct a financial feasibility. A lot of people I have seen, really they panic when they've got to put together a financial feasibility. And if you don't know how to do it, I strongly recommend that you learn it. You don't have to buy my course to learn this, but you got to find somebody else who can teach you how to do it, and you got to have an application that does it. If you get the property development system has everything, application and full course that teaches you how to do it. But the reason I'm telling you this is because I used to have a networking group of property investors and developers that I used to run, and a lot of people used to come there. And once I was presenting them with how to run numbers and how to do their feasibility and what are the factors they've got to consider, what are the different costs they've got to consider, and I kid you not, there was this person in the room who raised his hand and said, I'm doing this development, and sorry Amber, I didn't do any numbers on it. And it was like he was trying to mock me. And I just got this video, and every time I watch this clip, it reminds me of that person, the way he said to me that sorry, I didn't do any numbers on it, but I'm still doing the development. Of course you can, because you're a good developer, you're not a great developer. So I just want you to watch this clip and look at, this clip is from the movie Dumb and Dumber by Jim Carrey. And if you look at Jim Carrey's reaction, this is the exact reaction that I got from this guy who said that, sorry, I didn't do any numbers. So if you watch this video, it's just a little clip, and watch Jim Carrey's reaction.
You sold my dead bird to a blind kid? Lloyd, what do you... Petey didn't even have a head. Harry, I took care of it.
So the way Jim Carrey says, Harry, I took care of it, that was the attitude that this really good developer had when he said to me that he didn't do any numbers on his site. And I said, okay, it doesn't matter. And a lot of people, I'm not saying that his development would go bad or it would go south, but chances of him getting caught out or him coming across some expenses that he hasn't accounted for or allowed for in his feasibility to begin with are greater than someone who's actually done their numbers properly before they actually start doing something. So great developers not only know how to conduct a 2-minute feasibility, they also understand how to do a complete full-scale financial feasibility, and that's a very important skill to have. This requires a knowledge of important concepts, to understand numbers. You gotta understand how there are different kind of metrics and concepts within the financial feasibility, that like IRR or return on equity and development margin, and how they're calculated and the way they work. They got to understand how does the GST work, or how does the GST work with the margin scheme, and you've got to understand and how to work a full-scale financial feasibility application. So these are some of the traits that great developers have. A lot of good developers also don't understand how development finance works. Now, development finance is very different from your run-of-the-mill retail finance. Like you go to a bank, you say, I've got a 9 to 5 job, I want a home loan. And that's very different to getting development finance. Development finances can be structured in so many different ways, and it can be staged. It can be, it's just different. And there are always 3 stages of finance in any development project. And I explained that in my property development system. But most good developers do not fully understand the various ways they can structure development finance, and most also do not understand how they can control the valuation process. And it is very important that you understand this concept. To be a great developer, you must understand both these things. First, there are different ways to structure development finance. What are the banks looking for when they are actually trying to look at your deal? So make sure that you've got all your ducks lined up in the first place. Commercial finance, how does that work? Stages of different development finance, types of loans, and your finance checklist before you actually go and before you actually apply for your loan. All this is very heavily dependent on valuation, and if you get an incorrect valuation, that can really you can get caught out you can get caught out because you haven't got enough equity, and that happens when the valuation comes in lower and you expected the valuation to come in a little bit higher, and suddenly you got to put cash injection from your own pocket, and I explained that in my course. But first, you've got to understand, as a great developer, you've got to understand why getting a favorable valuation is very important. All the different types of valuations, and what are the things and what are the steps that you can take to get these favorable valuations. And you've got to understand different valuation methods. What does the valuer look at, and all the web resources that you can use to be able to ascertain, to get at a value before you even go and see a valuer. So that you actually basically, this whole valuation process is that you steer the valuer in the direction you want the valuer to go to, and not let the valuer steer you to the direction where the valuer wants to go. So it's very simple to lay the groundwork with the valuer, so that your valuer is actually moving on your line of thought rather than their own. So these are the things that are very important, and how you can do them. Another mistake that I see people making that is that you end up using the wrong financial structure. There's an old saying that it says it's the money you keep that matters, not the money you make. And this goes, the reason I put it here is because although you've made a lot of money, if you haven't got it in the right structure, you'll end up paying either more tax, or if you get sued by somebody, you won't have any protection whatsoever. So what would you rather have? You would rather have control or bragging rights in your name. So that's where asset protection and different tax structures come in, which are beneficial to you in terms of tax savings. And your accountant would be the best person to advise you on this. But if you have a working understanding of how these things work, you can go and talk to your accountant about them. Every deal is different. Every deal, the way it is structured, is also different. It depends upon what you want to do towards the end of the deal. So this is not an accounting advice. I'm not an accountant, although I did once qualify to be one. But I'm not an accountant, so I'm not here to advise you on what structure to use. But you've got to have a working understanding of all these different structures that are used for development. At least understand the most common ones that you can use and why you're using them. And then when you're ready for a development, go to your accountant and get the accountant to set up a structure for you, and ask them and discuss with them your requirements, and they will advise you what needs to be done. But it's always good to have a working understanding of all different structures and how they protect you and how they can help you save on tax. Bragging rights cost money. So if you want to control or you want to own, when it comes to developments, you always want to be able to control things rather than own things. And when I say own things, you buy assets in your own name, And when you want to control stuff, you just buy assets in a different structure so that you control them because you are the beneficiary, or you are the appointer, or you are the corporate trust, you are the director in the corporate trustee, or you are the trustee. So you control them, but they are not in your name. They are actually owned by the trust, and so on. So there are different things that you got to know within this module, basically. And I see a lot of people who have no idea, who've gone and done this development in their name or their wife's name or whatever, and then they don't understand when they've got to pay a whole lot of tax because they chose the wrong structure. Great developers understand all different financial structures, and they also know how to negotiate well. I think negotiation is a very important skill to have in this industry, and if you are going to be in this industry for a long time to come, you would want to develop your skills. A lot of people don't have those skills. I, for one, wasn't born with those skills, but trust me, I've actually built that skill, and I keep building it every day. So most of us are not born negotiators. Some get it naturally, and some, like me, spend a lot of time sharpening and learning new skills, and they don't come naturally to them. So I do a lot of reading on negotiation and all the techniques because I not only negotiate when I'm buying land, I'm also negotiating with different trades because we have a construction company. And when I'm negotiating with the trades, we're negotiating on terms, timelines, and all different sorts of things. So, and negotiation is such a good skill to have that you could be negotiating with your kids, you could be negotiating with your wife, your friends, your business partners, and so on. So it's a very important skill, and it is the same skill across the board. It doesn't matter if you're negotiating to get a free upgrade, or you are negotiating on a property deal. It's just the tactics that change, but the negotiation principles at the bottom of negotiation remain the same. So good developers understand that, and I've got a small module. Negotiation is such a vast field that I can actually do a full course on negotiation. In fact, I've been working on something that I can put together for negotiation. But you got to understand how this works properly. So that's one of the skills that a lot of good developers have.